Thanks for coming in. Now, we're going to kick off on what we're calling freedom of expression. God, I don't know who writes these headlines. Absolutely appalling. Look, this is just the latest rather trivial incident, I guess. The University of Leicester had a statue of Margaret Thatcher, only been up for a short while before some chap started throwing eggs at it. I gather he's the Deputy Director of the Arts Centre at the University of Leicester. I mean, no huge big deal, but what does it tell us about the state of public debate and freedom of expression in the UK, Claire? Something that's a big concern of yours. Well, it lacks a certain imagination, let's put it that way. You could tell he's a bit older, that it was kind of eggs. And, should be a milkshake if you, isn't that? That's exactly all the rage for the youngsters these days. Look, I spent most of my youth fighting against, arguing against Thatcher and Thatcherism, and was very firmly on the side of the miners, we'll all be delighted to know. But I think it's a sign of the times that the great act of political rebellion is throwing eggs at a statue. It's a statue. Yeah, it's pretty... Do you know what I mean? You do think it's a bit lame. And of course it's a bit lame as well because, you know, if you're really going to go for the statues, you now have to drag them down and drag them along and throw them in rivers to be making any kind of an impact, as we saw in Britain. Yeah, egg throwing's a bit... Yeah, I mean, you know, sort of like sad. Yeah, but sad. On the free speech point, I think there's a genuine problem that this is the way that people react to ideas or individuals whose ideas you disagree with is to kind of like be angry and outraged and to do things like that. And so although, as you say, this is a trivial example, I think that the fact that there's an atmosphere in academia that would mean that were you to be the kind of 18 or 19-year-old, who, by the way, I think might be a bit sad, who says, Thatcherism is something I'd like to explore. Well, you're not going to do that at the University of Leicester if your, you know, tutor is going around throwing eggs at the statue, right? That's why it's a problem. And, I mean, is this... I'm not actually quite sure where the law stands here. It's presumably illegal to throw eggs at a statue. It's criminal damage, or potentially, isn't it? I don't know. But it seems to me it speaks to a paucity in public discourse. Has that got worse, or am I just getting older and more whingy and gammony with each passing year? Or back in the day, did we not actually have proper debates about Thatcherism and the miners? Or is it always just been this rather trivial performative art, basically? You might well be getting older and more gammony. But probably two things can exist at once. And I can't be right. Yeah, you can be right, exactly. I actually think that there's an intolerance about other people's ideas that expresses them itself in a way that describes people who you disagree with as evil, who shouldn't exist, who should have eggs thrown at them, who should be torn down from the public arena. I think it says something about our war on the past. And I do think these are contemporary problems. I don't think they always existed. I think things have degenerated. And I think that the left that I'm from, but the identitarian left as is presently emerged, has led the way in terms of trying to shut down any oppositional ideas at all. And I think the fact that you can just say, well, it was Thatcher, so what do you care, right? Misunderstands that this was a highly influential Prime Minister who, whether you like her or not, or what her legacy was, has a huge influence on British politics. And he should be able to, if you're disagreeing with her, demonstrably, intellectually demolish that, not throw eggs at it. And is this, I mean, okay, we're probably overpicking on this one chap in this one incident, but is this the nature of political discourse now? I mean, I was kind of, when Extinction Rebellion were all over the place, it seemed to me to be more of a kind of jolly day out and a festival. You can do a bit of poetry reading and, you know, dance a jig and, you know, knit your own quiche or whatever else they would do. But there wasn't much actual debate or discussion about climate, environment policy. It was all just a sort of, you know, it was kind of, you know, a festival. The nature of politics has changed to become much more performative. So that's kind of what you're saying. But it's also the case that, for example, I have defended the right to protest against the increasing incursions on that right by the Conservative government, which, by the way, I think is equally performative, because a lot of the laws they're bringing in are as much about saying, in a kind of virtue signalling way, we're going to clamp down on protest. You do think you've got huge swathes of public order legislation that you can use, but the police aren't using it, right? And
whether that's a politicised police force or a sanitised police force, whatever it is, that's the problem. Not just bringing in more laws, more rules, because that's actually going to have an impact on all of us. When you talk about Extinction Rebellion, it's also a case that these days going on a demonstration was on the one hand making a loud noise so that you could have your views heard, but it was about a way of attempting to win over your fellow citizens to an idea. You were demonstrating your displeasure, but there was always, like people like me selling newspapers or leafleting, but you'd be saying to the public, this is why you should join our side and why you shouldn't just be walking along the pavements. Whereas indeed these demonstrations that are so performative basically say the public are rubbish, they don't get it, so we're going to ruin their lives as much as possible and make it impossible for them to get to work, to do anything. So it's anti-democratic, and then the police stand there kind of going, we don't know what to do, what do we do?
Why do the police not know what to do? Once the line's been crossed, and I don't know, you've glued yourself to the road or something, it's now not a matter of protest, is it? You're now blocking the public highway and you should be removed. But
most of these protests break laws that presently exist. The police also don't want to be unpopular. So there's this idea that, we can't be seen to be too heavy-handed because we might get the wrong kind of headlines. So they're also being performative. I think there is some truth, sadly, in the idea that in some instances the police actually are sympathetic to the demonstrators. And I do think we saw that particularly around...
Well, that's not a problem, is it?
Well, it is if their sympathies are, individually they can think what they want. That's not the point. The point I'm making is that they sort of think, well, I think it was terrible what happened to George Floyd, and maybe these Black Lives Matter protests have a point. And then on other demonstrations, you see them going in really hard, and you think, oh, you didn't like them ones. No, you're not meant to think like that, because you're meant to have consistent policing that, if you want, is the strong arm of the state when it's necessary. And I don't think that any of us can feel entirely sure that the police... It's a bit like impartiality in the BBC. You can say you're impartial as much as you want, but when you really know what they really think, and so many of the police officers are now going on courses in, gender identity and how to be diverse and all the rest of it, that they've kind of bought into a lot of this stuff as a way of softening the way they're seen by the public, but as a consequence of which they are neither doing their jobs nor seen to be fair.
Well, if you enjoyed that conversation, why not watch one of these other videos? And while you're here, remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss out on a single IEA broadcast.